We are sane people, aren't we? What if I tell you that there is a chance that you being what you are now, if you were in a different time and place, you just won't be declared insane but might even be forced into mental asylums? You didn't always need to be clinically, medically, neurologically insane to be sent to asylums. Sometime not far ago, the line between sanity and insanity was so blurred, with the line drawers being authorities before medical professionals. The following is a series of anecdotes, incidents, fragments of history, memories, and recollections of times when the intentional blurring between sanity and insanity led to unimaginable horrors. Till 1952, we didn't have any effective psychiatric drugs to aid the mental patients, so mental asylums were almost always overcrowded and underfunded, with a few ways of treatment only being certain therapies and surgeries. The most disturbing of these surgeries was lobotomy. The curses of lobotomy devastated the lives of thousands of people, but one way to grasp this tragedy is by looking at a unit, a certain trinity as I'd like to put it. The trinity is three men, one being the inventor of lobotomy, one being the popularizer of lobotomy, and one being the one who suffered. Egas Moniz, Walter Freeman, and Howard Dully. In 1935, Antonio Egas Moniz, a Portuguese neurologist, invented lobotomy, which was originally called leucotomy. He developed a prefrontal leucotomy, which involved drilling holes in the skull and injecting alcohol to destroy white matter in the frontal lobes. He claimed it had calming effects on patients with schizophrenia and other psychiatric disorders. He ignored serious side effects like emotional flatness, apathy, and cognitive deficits. The side effects were ironically described as improvements. He was awarded with the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1949. Now the popularizer, Dr. Walter Freeman. While Moniz invented lobotomy, Freeman popularized and turned lobotomy into a mass phenomenon in the United States. In 1946, he introduced a different kind of lobotomy called the transorbital lobotomy. In this procedure, he inserted an ice pick-like instrument through the eye socket into the brain and switched it around to sever connections in the prefrontal cortex. No anesthesia was used, with electroshock being the only way to render patients unconscious. The whole procedure took less than 10 minutes. Imagine a brain surgery taking less time than having a bath. Freeman was not even a surgeon, still, he performed over 3,500 lobotomies, sometimes as many as 25 a day. The term used by Freeman for the patients after lobotomy was surgically induced childhood. Despite his claims of success, many patients were left severely disabled, intellectually impaired, emotionally blunt, and unable to take care of themselves. And here is the scariest part. Lobotomies became a fad in the 1940s and 50s, and it didn't even had a strong criteria as to who will and will not undergo these surgeries. These lobotomies weren't just performed on severe, uncontrollable mental cases, but were also performed at times on women with emotional problems, hard to manage children, and defiant teenagers. Many homosexuals were also lobotomized as a means of normalization. Now the sufferer. Howard Dully was a regular rambunctious kid with a usual childish defiantness. But his stepmother, who thought he was uncontrollable, disrespectful, and hard to discipline, started consulting psychiatrists. None of the doctors found anything seriously wrong with him, but one of those, Walter Freeman, didn't think twice before performing lobotomy on this young boy. The surgery was performed in December 1960, and in 10 minutes, 12-year-old Howard's life was changed forever for the worse. After the surgery, he felt confused, numb, and lost, and his father and stepmother acted as if nothing had happened. Over the next few years, his behavior worsened. He was institutionalized multiple times, from juvenile detention centers to mental institutions. As an adult, he spent years homeless, battling emotional numbness and alcoholism. By his 40s, he started recovering. He married and became a bus driver. Maybe this partial recovery was possible because he was still a child when the procedure was done on him. As his brain wasn't fully formed, he partially recovered as he grew up, unlike the adults who underwent lobotomy. In the early 2000s, he began researching his past, and after gaining access to Freeman's archived records, he came to know what had happened to him. In 2007, he published his memoir, My Lobotomy, co-written with Charles Fleming. He said,
"It's just so easy to label someone and dump pills down their throat. I think we need to quit trying to modify other people, either chemically or with operations. I think we have nerve telling someone that they're not appropriate, that they're not valuable."
from 1964 to 1982, the Soviet Union was under the authoritarian Communist Party led by Leonid Brezhnev. As the story goes for all authoritative states, the most dangerous of all for the state are the political dissidents. And what's the best way to effectively crush the voice of political dissidents? Prosecuting them? Killing them? These ways only intensify their voices. If there is one effective way to silence their dissent, is by declaring them insane. Andrei Snezhnevsky was a leading Soviet psychiatrist who developed the concept of sluggish schizophrenia. He claimed that this form of schizophrenia was a slow, progressive form with almost no visible symptoms. And the following were the reasons for diagnosing anyone with sluggish schizophrenia: reformed delusions, struggle for truth, perseverance, anti-Soviet thoughts, oppositional thinking. Under the covert orders of KGB and the Communist Party, these dissenters were forced into mental institutions. Here lies the diabolical genius of the state. They were not imprisoned, they were sent to asylums for treatment. Vladimir Bukovsky was one of the most prominent symbols of resistance to political repression and abuse of psychiatry in the USSR. Bukovsky was first arrested in 1963 for possessing anti-Soviet literature, and after the authorities found him too articulate and prominent to imprison, they diagnosed him with sluggish schizophrenia. He ended up spending over 12 years in Soviet prisons, labor camps, and psychiatric wards. In 1971, he smuggled over 150 pages of psychiatric hospital records to the West, showing how dissent was medicalized. His documents caused an international outrage, leading the World Psychiatric Association (WPA) to investigate the USSR. He later settled in Cambridge, UK, and continued his human rights work. He also ran for president in 2008, but was denied registration. In his memoir, To Build a Castle, My Life as a Dissenter, he wrote that the great truth was that it was not the rifles, the tanks, and not atom bombs that created power. Power depended upon public obedience, upon a will to submit. More than 300 years ago, Salem, a village in Massachusetts, New England, was ruled over by Puritan theocrats. Puritan theocrats were strict Protestants who wanted to purify the Church of England with Catholic practices and believed that religious law should govern the society. From February 1692 to May 1693, 200 people in Salem were accused of witchcraft. 30 were found guilty, 19 were executed, 14 of them being women. These accusations were based not on solid factual proofs of any kind, but on spectral evidence. Spectral evidence was a type of testimony when accuser could claim to be seeing the accused's spirit or spectre tormenting them, even if the accused was physically elsewhere. These unverifiable accusations were taken at face value by the courts, and this is what led to mass hysteria and paranoia between the residents. This became almost a breeding ground for revenge in the matters of property disputes, family rifts, and personal grudges. Not just that, being conspicuous in any way, getting into trouble with somebody, and especially for a woman, not being the ideal, obedient, submissive woman was enough reason for someone to find you in the possession of Satan. Bridget Bishop was the first person who was executed in these trials. The disturbing detail is that she was mentally sound and there is no record of her showing any form of strange behavior which was usually associated with women accused of witchcraft. In this deeply orthodox society, Bridget Bishop in no way acted like a woman is supposed to act according to the Puritans. She wore bright, flashy clothing, ran a tavern where gambling and drinking reportedly took place, married multiple times, and was infamous for her independent, outspoken personality. How can she not be a witch when she is going against the very definition of an ideal woman? She was hanged on 10 June 1692. Through secondary sources, this is said to be a courtroom statement given by Bridget Bishop. I am innocent. I know nothing of it. I have done no witchcraft. I am as innocent as a child unborn. Like in the earlier part where rebellious Russians were forced to mental asylums, here some nonconformists were accused of Satan taking over their reason. So where does the true insanity lies here? In the minds of the theocrats for whom nonconformism was a fatal flaw, and each word written in some thousands of years old text is sacred because it was a tradition to call it secret? Or the insanity lied in those nonconformists who, knowing all this, still chose to be what they were and died being what they chose to be? I leave this question to you. (19th century England). In Illinois, 1851, first hospital for the mentally ill was opened. A law was passed which required a public hearing before a person could be committed against their will. But there was one exception. A husband could have his wife committed without even a public hearing or her consent. There was this couple, Theophilus Packard and Elizabeth Packard. They married in 1839 and had 6 children. After a couple of years of apparently peaceful and uneventful married life, tensions started building. Theophilus had quite rigid religious beliefs, but Elizabeth boldly questioned his belief and expressed opinions contrary to his. They disagreed on the methods of child rearing, family finances, and on the morality of slavery. Her defense of an abolitionist, John Brown, who favored the abolition of slavery, embarrassed her husband. In 1860, her husband judged that his wife was slightly insane, a condition he attributed to excessive application of body and mind. He decided to have her committed. She was forced to spend the next 3 years in Jacksonville Insane Asylum. In 1863, in part due to the pressure from her children, she was discharged after being declared incurable. After her discharge, Theophilus locked her in the nursery of their home and nailed the windows shut. Elizabeth managed to drop a letter about this mistreatment from the window. It was delivered to her friend, who in turn delivered it to the judge. A trial took place, Packard versus Packard. It lasted about 5 days. Theophilus's witnesses from his family testified that Elizabeth argued with her husband and tried to withdraw from his congregation, and this they considered a sign of insanity. Elizabeth's witnesses and neighbors, who were not a part of Theophilus's church, testified that they never saw any signs of insanity in her. The jury deliberated for just 7 minutes before deciding the case in Elizabeth's favor. When she returned to the home she shared with her husband, she found that the night before her release, her husband had rented their home to another family, sold her furniture, had taken her money, notes, wardrobe, and children, and had left the state. Even though she appealed to the Supreme Court, she had no legal recourse, as a married woman in the state at that time had no legal rights to their property or children. This was the last tipping point for her. She became a national activist for mental health and women's rights. She founded Anti-Insane Asylum Society to fight for the rights of institutionalized individuals. Her campaign led to laws in multiple states requiring jury trials before someone could be institutionalized. She authored several books, including 3-year imprisonment for religious beliefs, Great Disclosure of Spiritual Wickedness in High Places, and The Prisoner's Hidden Life. A female journalist, Nellie Bly, who spent 10 days in an asylum feigning insanity, wrote her experience after coming out in her book 10 Days in a Madhouse in 1887. She wrote, "What accepting torture would produce insanity quicker than this treatment? Take a perfectly sane woman, shut her up, and make her sit from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. on straight back benches. Do not allow her to talk or move during these hours, and it is only a question of time when she'll go mad." This story of Elizabeth Packard is a hopeful story, but when there God knows how many women who couldn't come out, who sure were sane when forced into asylums, but the asylums itself turned them insane, we'll never know. The idea for this video essay originated when I was reading about Vincent van Gogh. I believed that he was perhaps mentally well, but still was forced into an asylum for some unreasonable reason. But when I came across a letter of his where he described his state to his brother Theo, that my illness, as I see it, is this: I am overcome by acute mental disturbances, moments of anxiety, hallucinations, and then a kind of confusion that prevents me from thinking clearly. This letter convinced me that Van Gogh must have been seriously mentally unwell, and I dropped him from this list of people for whom the sole reason for struggle to prove their insanity was nonconformism. Then I came across a name, Antonin Artaud. Antonin Artaud was a French artist with work ranging across a variety of media. Best known for his writings, he was also a theatre artist and had also acted in classic silent films like The Passion of Joan of Arc and Napoleon. Artaud experienced psychological distress since his teens. Later, he frequently experienced auditory hallucinations, paranoia, and mystical delusions. In the 1930s, his behavior and writings became way more erratic. Then in 1937, after showing threatening behavior, he was deported from Ireland, and until 1946 he was constantly institutionalized from one institution to another. Now, I would have again dropped Artaud from this list because he was under severe psychological distress and not perfectly suitable for the precise subject of this video. Then I came across an essay wrote by Artaud titled Van Gogh, the Man Suicided by Society. I was just going to include non-conformists who were declared insane by the insecure society. But for this particular chapter, and because of this coincidence, let's expand our canvas to include those non-conformists which were not just declared, but driven insane by society. Now I understand that this part is slightly more ambiguous than the previous ones because we don't know all the known, unknown, public, hidden details about a person undergoing a psychological breakdown. And we can't blame everything on society, can we? Not everything, but sure, society had something to do with it, don't you say so? That's the question, and following is an answer by Antonin Artaud from his essay. Now you may not agree with him, but I assure you that the following words might impact the way you look at society, the way you look at insanity, and the way you look at sanity. Here it goes. No, Van Gogh was not mad, but his paintings were bursts of Greek fire, atomic bombs whose angle of vision, unlike all other paintings popular at the time, would have been capable of seriously upsetting the spectral conformity of the Second Empire bourgeoisie and of Myrmidons of Thiers, Gambetta, and Felix Faure, as well as those of Napoleon III. For it is not a certain conformity of manners that the painting of Van Gogh attacks, but rather the conformity of institutions themselves. And even external nature, with her climates, her tides, and equinoctial storms, cannot, after Van Gogh's stay upon earth, maintain the same gravitation. All the more reason why on the social level institutions are falling apart and medicines resemble a stale and useless corpse, which declares Van Gogh insane. Van Gogh did not die of a state of delirium, properly speaking, but of having been bodily the battlefield of a problem around which this evil spirit of humanity has been struggling from the beginning. The problem of the predominance of flesh upon spirit, or of body over flesh, or of spirit over both. And where is this delirium is the place of the human self. Van Gogh searched for this throughout his life with a strange energy and determination. He did not commit suicide in a fit of madness, in a dread of not succeeding. On the contrary, he had just succeeded and discovered what he was and who he was, and the collective consciousness of society, to punish him from escaping from its clutches, suicided him. There are consciousnesses which on certain days would kill themselves over a simple contradiction. And to do this, it is not necessary to be a madman, a registered and classified madman. On the contrary, it is enough to be in a good health and to have reason on one's side. I, in a similar situation, shall no longer tolerate someone telling me, as so often has happened, Mr. Artaud, you are raving, without committing a crime. And this is what they told Van Gogh, and this is what gave the final twist to the knot of blood in his throat that strangled him. I'd highly recommend all of you to watch One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's a brilliant film which perfectly embodies the central idea presented in this essay. In this essay, we explored some dark chapters of human history where non-conforming individuals were felt to be so threatening that to declare them mentally insane and force them into asylums was the only way at the disposal of society. Because for society, an individual is not just threatening but also extremely dangerous. Dangerous to the whole tradition, beliefs, and just the whole way of life. Because individuals effortlessly bring change, revolution, and the collective is comfortably miserable with their dead past. That for them, making this leap of faith of doubting their whole heritage and jumping into the unknown is too long a leap. The collective choose to stay conforming and miserable and warm between the herd of identical sheep, whereas the non-conformists, the individuals, the insane, the madman, alone, aloof, burning fast and bright, dance on their own legs before the inevitable hugs them and mixes them with others and all.